In yesterday's lesson, we talked about the Pilgrims and the Puritans and their journey to America. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the expansion of the European influence on America and the 13 original colonies. Let's get started. So, we're going to talk about how America started to grow and the 13 original colonies started, and when European influence really started to take hold in North America. So, a new kind of colony was started under King Charles, where basically a rich, wealthy person who had a good relation with the king could be given some property, and they could do with it whatever they wanted. They could rent it out to people. They could have their entire, giant plot of land to do whatever they wanted with it, basically. The first one of these colonies was Maryland, and King Charles made a guy named George Calvert the owner of Maryland. Well, what happened is George Calvert didn't stick around that long. He ended up dying. Calvert died before it became official, but his son, Cecilius Calvert, received permission to have Maryland. They ended up setting a colony in the Chesapeake Bay area, and Lord Calvert was a little bit different. He was Roman Catholic, but he wanted religious freedom in his colony. So he passed something called the Toleration Act. And to tolerate something means to allow it to happen, even if you disagree with it. So he wanted to have freedom of religion in his colony. So the next two colonies after Maryland are going to be Rhode Island and Connecticut. So what happens, the Puritans were the ones who came over in the last lesson. Their rules were very, very strict, and they had a hard time attracting some people. So Roger Williams, he was a member of the clergy, which means he's part of the church, and he basically told the church that they were being kind of ignorant. They were being hypocrites, and the church came after him. So he decided to run. He ran to avoid going to prison, and he made his way to what is now called Rhode Island. He got some help from the Narragansett tribe, and after people heard that he had run and had started a new colony, people joined him. Roger Williams went to England to get permission to set up Rhode Island, and he was given permission to make it an official colony. So another group of people were interested in leaving. They wanted to separate. They wanted to go a little bit farther west. They know that it's good for planting and growing crops. And a guy named Thomas Hooker, who is a pastor, which means he works for the church, he decided to lead a group of people west. He started a settlement in Connecticut in 1636. 2 years later, they founded New Haven in Connecticut, and this place is unique because they were one of the first ones in America to draw up written constitutions. And a constitution is basically the outline of all the laws and rules for a place. So we got places up in the Northeast, and now we're going to start moving a little bit farther down south. So the next one is Carolina. In 1663, some English nobles approached King Charles, and they wanted to get part of Carolina. They realized Carolina had better weather. They probably could grow quite a bit of tobacco there, and it was different from these other places they'd already settled. So once the charter was granted, Carolina was started. And they named one of the most important cities, Charleston, after King Charles. But what happens is there starts to be bickering and fighting in Carolina. And Carolina starts off as one colony, but eventually ends up being split into two, North and South Carolina. The next one is New York. So New York originally was called New Netherlands, and the Dutch people owned it, not the British. It grows very slowly because they have strict rules about who can own property, and they keep a very tight hold on their land. The English people were getting closer and closer to the territory in New York, and what happens is eventually the English just declare that New York is theirs. And the English people have the largest army in the world. They haven't lost a battle in a long time. So they bring their army and they say New York is ours. And the Dutch people have a choice. They can fight or they can give up the territory. and the British end up taking New York away from the Dutch. The next one is New Hampshire. New Hampshire originally was part of Massachusetts, but it was sold back to the king, and New Hampshire became a royal colony. The next one is Pennsylvania, and William Penn was a very wealthy man, and what happened is actually the King of England owed him some money that he was not going to be able to pay back. So what the king did is he gave William Penn a huge piece of land in America, and that became Pennsylvania. William Penn was a Quaker, and he believed in equality for all people. So the people who lived in Pennsylvania, he gave them two important rights. They had freedom of religion and freedom to elect their leaders. The next one is Delaware. In 1682, the Duke of York, who's in charge of New York, gives William Penn a piece of land so he can have access to the Atlantic Ocean. The Dutch, the Swedes, and the Finns settle this area, and eventually this chunk of Pennsylvania gets divided into some smaller pieces, and then it becomes Delaware. So this chunk of land has gone through multiple different owners, but it eventually ends up being Delaware in 1704. Two more left, I think. Yeah, last two. So, New Jersey. So, New Jersey is similar to what happens with Carolina, but kind of in reverse. So, the Duke of York gave some land to two of his rich friends, and they were given chunks of land that became known as East and West Jersey. So, there was problems between East and West Jersey from the beginning. And eventually what happened is East and West Jersey were combined into one piece of land. So in 1702, it became New Jersey. And the last one is a solution to a problem that England is having. So in England, they are getting so strict with the rules, they are putting people in jail for anything, giving people life sentences for minor crimes. So England is running out of space in their jail. So a guy named James Oglethorpe comes up with a solution. He tells the king, hey, I know how to get your jails empty. We need to let these people go as long as they leave and go to America. So the people were kind of given, not a choice. They were let out of jail, but they had to go live in America. And this served a couple of different purposes for the British, because the land they were sending them to was a land full of conflict between the Spanish and the British. And basically, it helps the British in two ways. It makes their prison population go down, and it sends people there to kind of squash some of the beef that's going on with the Spanish.